welcome to Waste Summit 2021. So Waste Summit is where we gather all relevant stakeholders in the regions to share and discuss about waste management system. And this year we are focusing on waste and pollution under the theme of innovative role of technologies in waste management as a way forward for sustainable development. This morning, the very first panel discussion of our Waste Summit 2021 is about marine pollution. And my name is Likhedy, a program manager at Cambodia, and it's my honor to be one of the hosts in this morning panel and to also moderate the discussion among our experts and practitioners in this field. I would like to inform and introduce some of the ground rules before I move on to introducing our discussion as well as our speakers. So this session will run for about 90 minutes from right now until 11. And we will start off with each of the speakers' presentation for about 10 to 15 minutes each. And afterward, we will be accepting questions from our audience. And for our participants, please be informed that this session will be recorded, as we will also upload this on other of our channel later on for everyone to access to it. And please feel free to use the Waste Summit virtual background that is sent in the chat box right now. And we encourage everyone to also use their real name during this summit. And if you have any questions, please feel free to make use of the raise hand function, as well as our chat box, as our team is here to support you always. And also, throughout this whole session and interact with us. And also, please do not unmute yourself if not necessary. Now, I will briefly introduce you to our speakers. So today we will have 3 speakers with us to discuss about marine pollution. So first, we have Mr. Franke. He is the team leader ASEAN for Cambodia at GIZ, and he will be sharing about waste prevention and circular economy to protect seas and corals in Phnom Penh and Kratie. Second, we also have Mr. Majel. He is the research specialist at Fauna and Flora International, in short we call FFI, and he will be sharing about marine plastic pollution in Cambodia, providing the research findings, challenges, and opportunities. And lastly, we will have Mr. Karsten Hirsch. He's the CEO and co-founder of Plastic Fischer, and he will be sharing one of the Plastic Fischer's L initiative on efficiently cleaning rivers with locally built, low-tech, and low-cost solution. So without any further delay, I would like to invite Mr. Franke to take the stage and share his part.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Likhedy, for sharing the slides for me. Good morning, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, friends. I'm very glad to be part of this year's Waste Summit, and I'm honored to give the first presentation this morning. I think the Waste Summit is a very important event for us because we can only succeed in our work when we coordinate and cooperate with all stakeholders involved. And the Waste Summit combines and gives the stage to have discussions with stakeholders of the government, development partners, private sector, and the civil society, which is very important for us. As introduced by Likhedy, my function is team leader for group of advisors and specialists responsible for the implementation of several regional and ASEAN projects. I would like to talk today about the ASEAN-German cooperation on waste management and circular economy in Cambodia. And we as GIZ are very glad that part of our portfolio will be or starts to be now also 2 projects on reduction, the usage, recycling, and for the protection of marine environment and coral reefs, short 3R program. And another project will start ASEAN Municipality Solid Waste Management Enhancement, we call it short AMUSE, also here. Next slide, please. Just as introduction, few words about the ASEAN-German Development Cooperation. Germany works with ASEAN since many years, only for the development cooperation since 2006. We can say that Germany provides more than 175 million euro to ASEAN and is the 5th biggest contributor to ASEAN activities with this. The motivation for Germany to work with ASEAN is that we want to support the region in developing joint solutions for the balance of environmental conservation, for the sake of global goods, and the important economic integration in the region. And we want to contribute to the regional stability and prosperity. There are mainly 3 focal areas for the development cooperation between Germany and ASEAN. One is regional economic integration, the other one climate change and environment, and capacity building and institutional strengthening we implement as a cross-cutting area in all these projects. There might be a question why we have regional development cooperation projects and why we are talking about them here. Many challenges, including the marine litter and waste, can be solved only in cross-border cooperation. And the ASEAN states are especially important also for the ASEAN states. It's especially important to exchange between themselves, to learn from each other on applicable practices and solutions. And Germany wants to strengthen also ASEAN as a stability factor. It is important to note that in our cooperation on ASEAN level, we combine regional activities with activities on the ground in the countries, helping the ASEAN member states in implementing the ASEAN agreements and guidelines and best practices, what they learn from each other. Some highlights which led to our cooperation today. Maybe just important to note is our Oceans Conference in 2018, which happened to be in Bali in Indonesia. I'm lucky that I could take part there too. And GIZ organized a side event for this conference, the workshop on managing packaging waste, preventing marine litter. We invited also there already participants from all 10 ASEAN member states. And from there, we took the first input for the preparation of our projects. An important milestone for ASEAN is the adoption of the Bangkok Declaration on combating marine debris and the ASEAN Framework of Action on Marine Debris in 2019. And in 2020, we provided our concepts to the ASEAN senior officials on environment and the ASEAN technical working groups for coastal and marine environment and the Committee of Permanent Representative of ASEAN, which led to the signing of the implementation agreement between the ASEAN Secretariat and GIZ. This year, we started with the regional kickoff workshop and initiated the dialogue with the relevant partners on ASEAN level. And we also received the commission from our ministry BMZ for the AMUSE project. The formalization on ASEAN level is ongoing. I put a box here on the right side also to note, of course, there are also important experience we have from the bilateral cooperation. And I'm glad that I can mention here also that the Konrad Adenauer Foundation already started working on the development of a DICA in Battambang, which was followed up by a project of GIZ, our decentralization project DAR. And we have also other regional projects going on, for example, the Rethink Plastic project, which is co-financed by the European Union and based in Bangkok. Next slide, please. I think we all know that the population growth, the rising economic wealth, and the production and consumption patterns which change lead to a massive increase of waste in not only in the ASEAN member states. Coastal cities, river systems like the Mekong carry a lot of litter into the oceans and seas. There are some estimates, approximately 80% of the marine debris is plastic coming from land. On the other hand, the ASEAN region hosts 1/3 of the world's coastal and marine habitats and serves as the world hotspot for marine biodiversity. Against this background, our Triapromar project looks for integrated solutions across the plastic waste value chain and through interdisciplinary and holistic manner to address the transboundary issue. The project is designed to support the implementation of the framework of action and will also support the upcoming ASEAN Regional Action Plan for combating marine debris. The next slide, please. The AMUSE project looks more into the lack of capacities of cities and municipalities in the region to ensure basic waste management, and looks also or sees also the background that tourism is an important economic factor, which on one side contributes to the amount of waste, but also suffers from unsolved waste situations. Of course, we see at the moment that the tourism is not that strong, but of course, we hope that the tourism will come back to higher levels after the COVID situation is solved. We work together with national and local governments beside of the ASEAN Secretariat, but also will work together with local and national tourism association and other stakeholders in the tourism. The Triapromar project runs from July 2020. Formally, we had a delay in the formalization with ASEAN, so that's why we actually started also only this year. And it will run until June 24 and has a budget of 16 million euro. The next slide, please. The AMUSE project, which was commissioned this year, will hopefully start at the end of this year and is planned to run until September 23 with a budget of 6 million euro. Next slide, please. Both projects have different focal countries. Triapromar is focusing on one hand on the two countries along the Mekong River, Cambodia and Vietnam, and on the other hand on the two island states, Indonesia and the Philippines, while AMUSE focuses on Cambodia, Laos, PDR and Vietnam, and includes also Thailand as a source of best practices for the exchange among the ASEAN member states. Next slide. The Triapromar project has three outputs, will have three outputs. The first one is to support the regional cooperation and the knowledge management among the ASEAN member states. We will support all three relevant ASEAN working groups who are dealing with the topic. We will support a knowledge hub, and on the output 2, we will support the development of national measures based on the inputs from ASEAN to reduce the waste leakage within the focal ASEAN member states, and the translation of these measures into strategies on the local level. Output 3 focuses on the important involvement of the private sector. And output 4 is the implementation of pilot projects in all focus countries. In every of the 4 focus countries, we will have 2 pilot sites. On the right side, you see the fields of the ASEAN Framework of Action on Marine Debris. The 4 priority areas are well covered in these 4 outputs. Next slide, please. AMUSE has only 3 outputs, also reflecting the priority areas of the ASEAN Framework of Action. The first one, again, is the knowledge management and exchange between the ASEAN member states. Of course, here it will be important also to cooperate between or with the other TRIA Promote project, but also other stakeholders and development partners who are working in that field. Output 2 is will support municipalities to enhance their solid waste management. It will support national ministries to give capacity development to the municipalities, and will also involve tourism association and others. And also here we have as output 3 pilot sites, and of course the experience should be shared on ASEAN level. Next slide, please. This might be of most interest now for the participants in this meeting. What we plan to do. I start from the right side with the TRIA Promote project. The 2 pilot sites will be Kratie and Phnom Penh. In Kratie, we will focus on the enhancement of the solid waste management to avoid waste and improve the waste collection. We will, of course, have to include the informal sector in that, and will work together also with the with other development partners in that field. In Phnom Penh, the project wants to test approaches for the extended producer responsibility, EPR, which is a new topic for Cambodia. And we are looking forward here also to a good cooperation with UNDP, who have a similar approach following. And of course, the involvement of the private sector is very important. Then I go to the left side with AMUSE. The Siem Reap was selected as pilot site for this project. I think it's quite obvious if we want to combine solid waste management and tourism, Siem Reap will be the first idea. Here we want to involve the tourism sector and the local government to find solutions to improve the solid waste management and to go hand in hand in reducing the waste, improving the waste collection, improving recycling towards a circular economy. And I'm quite happy also to mention a little measure which would be financed out of a global project of GIZ on behalf of the German Ministry of Environment, where we soon wanted to implement pilot measures with the local community in Korong Archipelago to improve the solid waste management on that island, and also the engagement of the local community and the local businesses. And we are looking forward here also to cooperate closely with FFI, who will present after this presentation. We will, as a normal GIZ approach, work very closely with the government structures, especially with the Ministry of Environment of Cambodia. Here we have already trustful relations to the Department of Solid Waste Management and the National Council of Sustainable Development. We will support them in implementing the policies they already developed and giving guidance to local communities, municipalities, provinces. A very important step for that will be that we will place towards the end of this year an integrated expert within the ministry to support the ministry in this important work. With this, I would finish my overview and open to questions later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frank, for your sharing. So it's very interesting to also start off our discussion with understanding the cooperations between ASEAN and German development, including what kinds of projects that we have implemented in the past and what are the ongoing projects that we're having right now. So to our audience, if you have any questions for Frank, you can also drop it in our chat box. We will raise it after all of the presentation during the question and answer session later on. So without any further delay, I would already move on to the next speakers of ours. Today's discussion is Mr. Majel, who will be sharing about marine plastic pollution in Cambodia as well. So I will pass on the floor to Majel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Likhedy. I just want to check if everyone can see my presentation. Fantastic. As Likhedy say, my name is Majel Kong. I work in the Marine Plastic Project at Fauna and Flora International Cambodia. Today, I will be speaking about marine plastic pollution in Cambodia, including research studies that FFI has conducted on this topic. So a little bit about FFI's work in Cambodia. FFI has been working in Cambodia for over 10 years in the marine conservation space, including supporting the establishment of the first large-scale marine protected area in the country. Our work has been made possible through an incredible array of partners, including fisheries administration, community fisheries, and other community partners. In response to community concern and our own observations, FFI began a scoping research on marine plastic pollution in 2018. And from this research, we designed and developed a marine plastic project, which was officially launched in 2020. So in Cambodia, there is limited data on marine litter and plastic pollution in general. And this means that there is still a lot we don't know and don't understand about the problem. However, some studies have found that there is an extremely high consumption of plastic bags, particularly in urban Cambodia. We know that the volume of solid waste, including plastic waste, produced annually is also increasing in line with the country's economic growth, as Frank alluded to earlier. And this means this increase presents a challenge to the country solid waste management systems overall. In addition, many coastal communities and island communities lack access to solid waste management systems. And often this translates into a problematic disposal behaviors that actually lead to the increase of marine litter in the ocean. As I mentioned earlier, in 2018, FFI conducted a scoping research in 3 coastal sites. These were Gosdak village in Karong province as our focal research site, and Sihanoukville and Karong archipelago as our secondary research site. In Gosdak village, our research activities included socioeconomic surveys, key informant interviews, stakeholder mapping and analysis, household waste surveys and waste characterization, and marine debris surveys. In Sihanoukville, the research activities included key informant interviews and coastal debris audit, whereas in Karong Archipelago, we focused on stakeholder mapping and analysis, key informant interviews, and marine debris surveys. So from our scoping research, we identified 2 sources of marine plastic pollution in Kosdaq: household waste and fishery waste. 96.5% of all households surveyed in Kosdaq disposed of their waste directly into the ocean or on the shoreline, with 60% of the waste being organic waste and 20% of the waste being plastic. Looking at plastic waste, this figure was higher than what we typically see in terrestrial or urban areas. For example, in Phnom Penh, it was found that plastic waste accounted for only 21% of all household waste. 48% of respondents reported discarding plastic waste directly into the ocean. A further 42% of respondents reported that they burned their plastic waste in open areas, and 75% of all respondents reported they were concerned or very concerned with the presence of plastic waste in their community. In regard to fishery waste, we found that on average, each household in Kosdaq village uses between 16 and 24 fishing nets per year, with 414 households reporting fishing as their primary occupation. And we estimated that between 6,624 and 9,936 fishing nets are used each year in this community. Our findings suggest that 52% of used fishing nets are disposed of directly into the ocean. And this potentially means between 3,000 to over 5,000 fishing nets are entering the ocean each year just from this one community alone. And 78% of the marine debris we recorded were fishing waste, including fishing nets and lines. In our secondary research sites, we recorded over 5,000 pieces of coastal debris across 4 sites in Sihanoukville. 2, I believe, on Otres Beach, and one on Ochidil, and then one on Independence Beach. 81% of all the coastal debris recorded were plastic, with cigarettes being the most frequently found plastic type, followed by plastic food wrappers and plastic bags. In Karong Archipelago, we recorded 66% of marine debris being fishing nets. So following our scoping research, FFI conducted a solid waste management assessment in the Karong Archipelago. The study is funded by the World Bank Pro-Blue project, and our focal research study sites are Goddo Village on Karong Island and Pai Village on Karong Sinlam Island. Our data collection took place very recently in July, early this year, and our research activities included household and business waste characterization, brand audit of PET bottles, household and business surveys, and key informant interviews. For the purpose of today's presentation, I will only be speaking to the first component of the assessment, which is the waste characterization. So what have we learned from our most recent study? preliminary research findings showed that in Godot, the average amount of daily waste was 3.45 kilograms per household and 7.6 kilograms for businesses. In Mapaibai, on the other hand, the average amount of daily waste was 2.01 kilogram per household and 1.53 kilogram for businesses. 68% of all household waste and 79% of all business waste were recyclable. Organic waste was the most common waste type found in the two study groups, making up 52% of all household waste and 58% of all business waste, followed by plastic waste, which accounts for 30% of all household waste and 23% of all business waste. So again, given how lightweight plastic is, this suggests that both household and businesses generated a high volume of plastic waste in their daily waste. I want to quickly note here that COVID-19, of course, has a big impact on the volume of waste produced by household and businesses, and that we would have seen a much bigger volume of waste in both groups in a non-pandemic time. So based upon all of our research studies on marine litter in Cambodia, we have identified several rooms of opportunities, and these include strong political will and enthusiasm from stakeholders, including private and private sectors and community. Community is acutely aware of plastic problem, and they are actively asking for support. So local authorities. We also see existing enabling legislation and drive to develop new governance mechanisms. Cambodia already has fantastic existing legislation, sub-degree, and strategies pertaining to solid waste and plastic waste. So we need to be utilizing these in our intervention to marine plastic pollution in Cambodia. We also see scope for novel investment and innovation, including embedding circular economies that can actually benefit people, the planet, and the economy overall. However, it is important that innovative solutions to marine plastic pollution in Cambodia are framed by the local context in order to ensure maximum success. Lastly, we see room for enabling global and regional frameworks and an appetite for support and collaboration. As Frank mentioned earlier in his presentation, there's a strong drive toward collaboration and a strong need for that as well. And it is crucial that Cambodia is represented regionally and globally, and that action is again framed by regional and global frameworks. It is also very important to remind ourselves that marine litter is not a local problem, but is a transboundary challenge. And this we must work together across all borders to address this problem. Alongside opportunities, there are, of course, challenges. The first one being, as I said earlier, there are still gaps in our understanding of this acute problem. And so we must work to close any remaining knowledge gaps on of marine litter. Second, there is still a lack of technical capacity that is especially important at coastal and marine sites, and this includes research capacity. Third, coastal and marine and island sites are contextually and logistically challenging. As I said earlier in the presentation, solid waste management system in these areas are often deficient or inadequate. And so implementing solid waste management system in this area can be particularly challenging. Fourth, although marine plastic pollution is not necessarily new or a new problem, addressing the problem is, as we speak, there are a lot of enthusiastic actors and stakeholders who are looking to tackle the problem, but that also means there are a lot of lessons we've learned as well. Lastly, it is crucial for us to keep in mind that we are operating in a very complex stakeholder landscape. And so we need to ensure that everyone is heard, especially those vulnerable stakeholders in communities, such as the informal waste actors and remote and rural communities. In closing, I want to quickly highlight some of the next step activities that are currently on our list. And this include building technical capacity where it is needed, reaching research gaps and sharing information like what I'm doing right now, like what we're all doing right now today, establishing marine litter assessment and monitoring frameworks, adopting and trialing innovative solutions for coastal and island sites in Cambodia, again, keeping in mind the importance of context. And lastly, prioritizing collaborative and community-led approaches, which is very important. And that will be it for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Majel, for your presentation. So it's very nice to also learn and follow up on the opportunities and challenges about marine pollution, marine plastic pollution in Cambodia. And thank you for sharing the research finding at the focal as well as secondary sites that you have done. And also, again, to our audience, if you have any questions for Majel as well, please feel free to drop it in the chat box or wait to raise your hand later on as well. Our team will help facilitate as well as taking note your questions, and we will definitely raise it in the Q&A session for sure. So thank you very much. Yes, thank you. And so now we'll move on to the last presentation from our discussion that we will start soon is by Mr. Karsten Hirsch, who will be sharing about Plastic Fischer Triple L initiative. So Karsten, you may begin.
Yeah, a very good morning from Germany. And thanks for getting the opportunity to speak here today. Very interesting presentation so far, very interesting numbers from Majel. What he just presented was also new to me. I will talk a bit about what we are doing at Plastic Fischer. I hope you can see my presentation here. I hope, yeah, you will mention if not. I'm Karsten. I'm CEO and co-founder of Plastic Fischer. And we have founded our company to develop very cost-effective and efficient solutions to stop plastic already in rivers in emerging markets. And our vision is to have clean rivers and with this achieve clean oceans. We heard it already a lot today, and you also heard it, of course, before, that 1 million tons of plastic are entering the oceans every year and are coming through the food chain also on our plates as microplastics. And you are mostly also aware of that most of this plastic is coming from Asian rivers. This was actually also why we founded our company, because we saw in the Mekong Delta in Vietnam how plastic went through the oceans, and no company was at this time tackling marine plastic pollution already in rivers. And so we decided to do something against it. And now the presentation doesn't go forward. 2 years later, I am working with my dedicated team, mostly consisting of engineers in Asia and Southeast Asia, to stop this problem a bit closer to the source. And our approach, as we heard already in the beginning, is the Triple L approach. We heard already from 3R Promar, and maybe we can call ourselves now 3L Promar. So what I mean and what our philosophy is that we are manufacturing our technology and sourcing the material of our technology locally. We are convinced that we need to provide local technologies that we can repair, scale, and build in place with the help of local communities. And by avoiding imports, we also avoid, we save time, costs, and carbon, of course. Another benefit is that we can boost the local economy and also create full-time jobs by picking and sorting the waste locally and manually. This leads me to the next L, and this is low tech. This is the opposite of high tech, and we really try to minimize the moving parts of our technologies. And with this, ensure the easy repair and maintenance within the countries. And this, in the end, leads to low cost. And this was our idea or our bottom line that we wanted to follow. Yeah, when we said, okay, if we are working in Southeast Asia, or if we're working in emerging markets, we need to have low cost of collection. And with this, in the end, we can provide an affordable service. And yeah, I wrote on the bottom line that this is the only way to tackle marine plastic pollution at scale, but I'm just talking about urgent actions. Yeah, of course, prevention is super important. Legislation has to change. But if we talk about collecting plastic from the environment, I'm convinced that this triple L approach is very, very helpful to scale this in Asia. And now I talked a lot of how that looks, the triple L, and I want to show you a bit how our technologies, so to say, are working. This one is the first one that we call a trash boom. It's basically a swimming barrier that is sourced from locally available materials. We have pipes, we have steel frames and meshes, and then it is lined up in rivers. And here you can see it working in one of the most polluted rivers in the world. At least it was called like this for a long time. This is the Citarum River in Indonesia. And there I lived for more than half a year with my co-founders, and we developed this swimming barrier. It's not rocket science. Yeah, it's quite easy. I mean, I have a background in law. My co-founder is a graphic designer, so it had to be very simple. But it gave us a lot of exposure because yeah, the news were visiting us and were saying, hey, this is a really simple approach, and it's obviously working. Another option that we sometimes used is the trash block. It's basically for smaller creeks, a very simple structure that stops the majority of waste here. A good thing is that we also analyze the waste. You can see here in this picture the tea, the iced tea waste. And what we did was we would identify all these iced tea bottles and go a bit more upstream to identify where the source of this is coming from. We figured out it was a school upstream, so we could go upstream, talk to the school, set up trash bins, and also prevent this plastic eventually from entering the oceans, and work also a bit on the prevention side there with the kids. Another technology that we use is the walkable trash bin. This is more for bigger streams. It's also low tech, low cost, locally sourced. And we are talking all about manual collection or passive collection system. That means we still need labor to collect the plastic waste in the rivers. And as said, we decided to do so because we were thinking we rather pay people or create jobs than automating it and eventually dealing with the repair costs. All in all, we provide an end-to-end service. That means we manufacture the systems, we deploy the systems, we collect the waste and on a daily basis from the systems to prevent it also from overfloating and overloading. We transport the waste to our own sorting facilities that we set up. We sort between recyclables and non-recyclables. The recyclables are reintroduced into the supply chain, and the non-recyclables are used for thermal recovery. That means incineration with energy recovery. And yeah, this whole process is then also verified by a third party that says we set a standard for ethically correct processing of this waste, and we ensure that this is done. We are operational now mostly in India in this year, but next week on Monday, we kick off finally our grant finance project in Indonesia. And we also won a grant for a project in Vietnam in the Saigon River, where we want to tackle the plastic pollution with a new technology that you have not seen here in the slides yet. As you can see, you don't find the Cambodian flag yet in our timeline, but we are super interested in getting more opportunities to work in Southeast Asia. We would love to expand our network of people that can help us. We are still a startup. We're not a huge company that figured it out all. So I would be really happy about new partnerships, of course, getting a bit more known in Southeast Asia, as this is our focus area to work in. And we would also like to win new customers, even though we are financing our operations mostly through European funds, to work then in Asia. I think that was it for now. If you have any questions, of course, I saw already that the chat is quite active, but you can always reach out to me via email or visit our website and yeah, reach out to me. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, Karsten, for the presentation about the 3L initiative. So by now, I already remember it: locally, low tech, and low cost. So I hope our audience have learned about the initiative and the approach that has been used by Plastic Fischer as well. And have any questions, please continue to drop in the chat box. Right now, we will come to the question and answers session. But before we accepting questions as well as providing an answers, I would also ask to have a quick group photo, since we have a lot of people here with us, and we take it now, and then afterward we take questions and we could conclude and wrap up our session. So if everyone is comfortable with that, please turn on your webcam and join our group photo as well. We will be taking a screenshot from our side as memories as well. So I'll give a few minutes for everyone to also setting up, turning on their webcam. And if you have any questions, please continue to fill in the chat box as well, as we will be accepting it and answering your questions soon. Still many more people are turning on, so we'll wait another minute, then I think I will do the screenshot right away. Thank you. So I will just do the screenshot right now because there are 2 pages. So I will do 2 times. So I'll count until 3 and then you'll hear the screenshot sound. 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. So now I will pick up the questions from our audience and direct it to our speakers as well. So the very first questions that we have received is from Yotiraj Patra. The question is for Frank. So she was asking about EPR. So for EPR, extended producer responsibility, who are some of the key private sector actors you are engaging with? And so perhaps you could address this question first, and then we can pick up more and answers later on as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for this question. The first idea we have to work with is the beverage industry, especially about PET bottles and packaging of beverages. As we could see in most of the pictures, there are lots of bottles we could avoid. But I think that there might be also other sectors we could talk about. For example, we had in the last months several interesting workshops, actually regionally organized, about avoiding plastics in the food delivery business. We all know, especially under these conditions now, we all are ordering a lot of foods. We have to order because we cannot go out in many countries or under lockdown situations. And there are many ways to think about reducing or even avoiding plastic in the packaging of these deliveries. Another sector might be hotels and the hospitality industry. But this will be also discussed in the next months when we will set up the project here in Phnom Penh. Thank you.
Thank you. At the same time, we also received another follow-up questions by Akrawat, asking, because you've presented about the projects that you are currently doing. So the question was that, do you think that all of the projects will sustain in the long run? Because based on your presentation, it is more of like a project-based approach that has a specific time frame as well as the ending. So whether you see how would it be sustainable in the longer run on the project?
I can understand this question because that's a big concern for everyone. We don't want to just do something and then run away and forget about what we did before. But actually, it's my conviction, and it is a normal approach for GIZ since many years and since the beginning, to look into sustainability of our work. And we ensured it by we have this sustainability in mind from the beginning of our setup. Our inputs is not that we will go and do something, but all the time we are talking about developing capacities, giving skills to people, helping our partners to do something. It's not GIZ who will do something, but our partners will do. When I can pick up on what the presentation of FFI after me with the lacks of understanding, lacks of technical skills, this is something we will work on. And if there is more understanding in the population, in the government, and with the private partners, and if there are these skills available, I'm convinced there will be sustainable changes in the situation. Yeah, maybe so far.
Thank you for sharing. I hope it also answers back to Akrawat. If not, you could also raise your hand and clarify with our speakers. But then it's also there's also another interesting question posting by Mr. Odam that because in the Philippines, they passed a bill to ban single plastic use. So whether you also see that could be one of the milestones Cambodia can follow to also ban the single-use plastic as well.
Absolutely. I can share that I'm sitting here in the quarantine hotel because I just returned from Germany. Had my 2 weeks holiday there, and I could witness that there is a change also in Europe. I think it was in June or in May that the European law or ban on single-use plastic came into force. And I saw many changes already in fast food chains, shopping, and that we don't have I don't know, plastic cups at McDonald's or straws and so on. It will be an important part of change. It will not solve the problem, but it will be an important part. And what is important, that there will be solutions how to replace single use on one hand. But I think I'm personally very much convinced there is another aspect. We don't need to replace all the single-use plastics. Sometimes we just don't need them. There's one thing what you know, before coming to Cambodia, I a long time lived in Indonesia. But when I arrived here, I was surprised seeing even more plastic in the when I buy a drink. In Indonesia, at least, I just get a plastic cup with a closure and a straw. In Cambodia, I, in addition, get a plastic bag where the cup is in. What for? And even if I take this drink in a mall just to sit there. And I think there's a point where every consumer already can say, I don't need any plastic. It's already nice. We get now the drink in a paper bag, paper cup, but we don't need to top this cup, and then we don't need a straw. We can drink from this paper cup or even a glass. I don't need a straw in a glass when I'm drinking water from a glass. But many people get a straw and automatically when they get their glass, they take a straw for it. This is something we already can change on our own. Of course, a ban would put more pressure than on the producers. But I agree, it's important to work from both sides.
Yeah, maybe I can quickly say just a word to it, because I can really relate to what Frank said. When I was in Indonesia, actually, I saw the same. So it's I must say I saw that also a lot in Indonesia, that you get handed over a drink in 1 or 2 plastic bags. So I think L, yeah, reduce, reuse, recycle is good, but I saw also another, I think there was a 5L initiative, 5R, sorry. And the first one was refuse, and I can totally agree that this has to happen as well. That people, for me, the thing that I always, or the story I always tell is that people bought a package of cigarettes in a small market in Indomaret, and he got it in a plastic bag, and I never saw someone buy a pack of cigarettes in Germany with a plastic bag. And what happened was he received the bag, the cashier didn't ask him like, do you need a plastic bag? He just put it automatically, the cigarettes in the bag, and he left the store and threw the plastic bag on the ground and took his cigarettes and put it in his pants. And it's not yeah, it's just so automatically happening. It's in Germany, we've been through years of education through all channels, through media, through news and whatever. So yeah, it's just it's not that we are smarter here. We just been through like 5 years of, or 10 years of yeah, getting told from everyone to reduce it, and now we're finally at a point that we don't need that plastic bag, or understood that we don't need it anymore. So this refusal thing has to come in as well. I agree, Frank.
I agree.
Thank you for adding on as well, Karsten. But then, since you've also mentioning about the L initiative, and we also received one of the questions that it would be very interesting to hear your experiences on such engagement, that beside the L it is also equally important to look at the process and stakeholders engaged in the upstream of the plastic value chain, such as production, processing, financing, and design of various products to address some of the root causes on waste problem. So it would be very interesting for you to also share with us regarding your experiences on these engagement as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I touched this when I talked about the trash block and said, hey, we saw these iced tea cups, you know. Then we had the possibility to go upstream and identify, yeah, the source, if you want to call it like this, not the source who brings it into the market. And then we are talking again about extended producer responsibility, and I think this is where the question is more or less leading to. But we are especially when we lived in Indonesia quickly after founding our company, we decided to take immediate action. As a small startup, you cannot go to Coca-Cola. We also talk to Coca-Cola and to Danone, yeah. But if you come there as a small startup and tell them, hey, please stop using plastic bottles or plastic cups, they say, yeah, all right, here's the door, you can go out. Yeah, so the prevention part is super important, but it has to be tackled from someone else than Plastic Fischer, because we're a bit too small. We are focusing on the immediate action. And I had also very interesting talks with GIZ when it came to implementation of projects, because GIZ is a lot of times implementing prevention projects which are super important and need to be tackled on a big scale with a lot of money as well. But for us, we try to engage the local stakeholders, try to work in the small villages we are working, doing also workshops in how to avoid single-use plastic. But the big legislational work needs to be done from companies that are a bit more mature than us and more known than us, because we don't have that leverage to change something there. But what we can do is we can set up barriers and now stop plastic, while others are working on other sectors. So for me, it's very important, and there is a big lack of that, in my opinion, is collaboration between the different parties, actors that take immediate action, people that do prevention, people that do education. This has to work more efficiently between the parties. And yeah, so we are not the guys who do that, but we really need those partners to do it and collaborate.
Thank you. We acknowledge that you're working more on a smaller scale, but then as there's also a question by Massimiliano that your opinion, if more like at a larger scale, how to biggest polluters, given the fact that those rivers are also a big now. Share some of your opinion on that, if happen to be working on the larger river than the smaller scale one.
Yeah. We worked in one of the big rivers in Indonesia. There was basically no boat traffic, so we could put it over the whole river. We are about to deploy a big system in the Ganges in India, and are also working on a project in the Saigon River in Vietnam. And there, of course, we don't have the possibility to just, close the whole river. This is absolutely correct. So what we're doing is in both countries, we work together with a satellite company. So we are supported by NOAA from America and ESA from Europe, and they are supplying us with satellite images. So we can detect some hotspots, basically by identifying also water hyacinth patches that come down the river. And by seeing like firsthand from satellites, but then of course also on the ground, where the hotspot is, where the most of the plastic is flowing, we choose a strategically good point to set up a system that we anchor partially in the river, and then we cover just a fifth or a quarter of the river and collect the plastic there. One system does not collect all the plastic in the river, that's for sure. And yeah, you can imagine that there's so much plastic that it's that you need a couple of those systems to tackle that. But with this approach, we can ensure that the boat traffic can still happen. The permission thing is always the trickiest part, to receive it from authorities, especially if there's boat traffic. So we're not experts there, but we have a technology that we could implement, and we are trying to prove that in the next couple of weeks and months in India and also Vietnam. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yep. Yes. Thank you. As always, if it is not clear yet to you, provided the answers provided by our speakers, please also feel free to raise your hand, where you could also have the opportunity to unmute yourself and interact with our speakers to clarify on your questions. So now we also received quite a lot of questions for Majel regarding the research as well as the findings. So one question from Lida is that because you've conducted the research, and after the data that are conducted at the community, what do you do on the plastic waste at that site? So perhaps you could also share a bit on that note as well.
Thank you, Lida, and thank you, Likhedy, for facilitating. So I guess I'll speak to the waste that we actually collected during our data collection, if that's what the question is about. In the two sites, basically solid waste management system, in one side it doesn't exist, or it exists in a very deficient scale, and in another side it's very struggling as well. And so, but once we have collected all the waste and sorted the waste to understand the volume and the composition of the waste, we disposed of the waste using existing disposal practice in Koto. There are two waste collectors, and we work with both of them in order to dispose of the waste we collected. And in Mapai on Karong Silam, we there's an incinerator that was still functioning during our data collection period, but then from what I've heard, it's no longer functioning. But if your question is asking for like what to do after the waste, I think we're really at this point we're looking at on-site solution, right? So once we have all the waste, what to do with that? There's still a lot we don't know, and we're in the process of determining what would be the best approach for island community, because they're very different logistically and contextually from mainland. It's much more costly to transport, and so we're looking at like our two panelists alluded to, low-cost solutions and community focused solutions. So we're thinking of trialing, this site-based solution basically. But as to the particulars of solution, we don't have any of this yet as we speak. I hope that clarifies the question. If not, I can add something else too.
Thank you. But we also have another follow-up question, which is quite relevant as well from Sir Nick, that because your finding in Karong archipelago, whether you also share all of your findings to the local authorities there so that they also take further actions, such as perhaps having any campaigns to collect waste beside discarding into the ocean, or which is quite common that they burn in the open areas, they burn the waste. So whether you also share the finding with them, and whether they have any other post project that you are aware of upon that sharing as well.
Thank you. FFI work closely with fishery administration, with the local authorities, with the Ministry of Fishery, Agriculture and Forestry. And from what we've gathered in our data collection, there is already cleanup campaign happening on the Karong archipelago. It's just that this activity has been suspended by COVID-19, but from what we've learned, there used to be cleanup activities happening on the beach. And one of our next step activities also that I did mention would be to share these findings with authority partners as to how they will include this in their campaigns. It's really, it's really up to them, and we will support whatever activities are related to the reduction of solid waste and plastic waste in the communities. But in short, yes, we are looking forward to sharing the findings once we finalize everything.
Thank you very much. But then we also have questions, Isabel, asking specifically in the context of COVID, because your research came to the conclusion that without COVID, there would have been more waste and pollution. But then right now, we also have a lot of waste going on, like more food deliveries, quarantine measures, including masks, etc. So do you have any thought on how COVID-19 will actually impact more on the marine pollution based on your research?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And we took into consideration this aspect as well, right? Going into the field. And we didn't find a lot of protective equipment during our data collection, but that could easily be because the entire island, both islands were fully vaccinated, right, during our data collection. And there seems to be a rather relaxed attitude among the local populations to use protective equipment because there wasn't many tourists or visitors coming in. And so when we were there, we didn't observe heavy use of masks. Of course, there was enforcement. There was police going around ensuring that the local villagers were wearing masks and so on. But that didn't seem to be heavily exercised on the part of the communities. And we didn't find in our waste characterization, we found really small volume of PPE, namely masks. And I guess understandably, masks is expensive, and a lot of people perhaps don't want to have more expense on this, especially when their businesses and when their income is low in time of COVID. And in terms of plastic packaging and so on, we thought there would be more, but because the volume, the number of tourist visits was so low, for businesses, we saw a really small volume of waste in general, but for household, there didn't seem to be a lot of changes in their, what should I say, in sort of their daily dietary need, like food packaging wise and so on. There didn't seem to be like a strong change because of COVID. But I want to touch quickly on sort of like the EPR that we were talking about earlier. As I mentioned in my presentation, one of the research activities we did was a brand auditing of PET bottles, right? And surprisingly, we found the majority of the bottle waste to be local brands or Cambodian brands. So this is exciting, right? In terms of implementing extended user responsibility approach, that means the room to do that and the room for success in Cambodia is quite high, knowing that the majority of local brands are in Cambodia. And so there's just more space for us there to leverage whatever actions we want to do to reduce plastic waste. But also keeping in mind that, again, context is very important. Island communities have struggle to have food and water security challenge that is very different from other remote communities. And plastic products play an important role in meeting this daily food and water need. And so at FFI, really, we're looking at sort of reducing waste that are basically wasteful, but keeping in mind that there is a need on the part of the community to rely on plastic products in order to be able to meet food and water need in their daily life.
Thank you, Majel, for sharing. This another questions from Mr. Udam, but for this question, I would rather pose it to Frank and Majel. If you could also share, because you are working in different kinds of projects and also field. So his question is quite interesting, is that because when we clean waste in Koh Rong Archipelago, we have to transport waste to the recycling facilities. So do you have any thought to share in terms of whether there's any less expensive mode of transportations to bring waste from Koh Rong to recycling facilities, because the transportation through ship will be very costly for such transportation. So perhaps you could also share, based on your projects or the works that you have done respectively, on that question as well. Frank or Majel can go first.
Yeah, I guess I'll start, and Frank, you can jump in later. That is the challenge is fully knowledge, of course, and we know it from the get-go that, you know, in order to transport waste, even now it's expensive for a lot of villagers on the island to do so, to have their waste transported to the mainland for further disposal. So really, I think in the context of coastal and island communities, local community-based waste reduction would be the way to go, and you know, investing in local infrastructure that support the need to transport waste further would be the way to go. And as we speak, any other innovations might just be a bit too far for Cambodia to reach out for at this point. And so, you know, local infrastructure is key, I would say, toward implementing low cost and sustainable waste reduction strategy in these communities.
Thank you, Frank. Perhaps you could add, yes.
If I can add, it was interesting to see in Majel's presentation the composition of the waste, and we could see that the biggest share of the waste is organic. And I think there is the one important factor we have to take into account, and composting is possible on the islands. And so that should be an approach to work on that. What I don't see as possible is to have a recycling facility on the islands. The amount of plastics are just small. So there is no way around bringing the plastic back to the mainland. But maybe there can also be part of the EPR system, when you can identify most of the contributors, who are the producers, or what is sold in plastic there on the islands. Maybe they can take part of the cost as a buyback to ships which go anyway. But of course, also it will be important just to reduce plastic. And there might be policies why, when I want to have a water, I need to get a bottle of water. Why I cannot get a glass of water or fill my tumbler with water from a gallon? It already will reduce the plastic, the volume of plastic, and the gallons will be transported back and forth. But it is a challenge for every island state. I also know in Indonesia it's the same, and in the Philippines. There's another important question about glass bottles, because we often have the approach that multi-use bottles would be the best solutions for beverages. But glass bottles, they are even heavier and more difficult to transport. We have to look into that and to look for solutions for that and for best practices from other countries.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I wasn't even asked, but I wanted to quickly add something, because as we were starting in Indonesia, we of course also faced the issue that we have a lot of, or the situation that we have a lot of small islands that have a lot of waste. And we thought also, how can we tackle that problem? And as Frank said, you cannot set up on each island a recycling facility. But what you can do is a very I don't know how to say that, rudimental sorting facility, to centralize the waste collection, at least in these islands, do initial sorting here and bale the waste that you find. You can bale between non-recyclables and PET bottles, and the most of the plastic and as we heard, most of the waste is not even plastic, and the plastic waste can be separated in just, let's say, two main categories, which is non-recyclable and recyclable, and bale it, store it, and then ship it to the mainland when you have a container full of 20 tons of plastic. And if you can manage to collect it from the households in a dry state, or even set up low-cost drying machine, then you can at least wait until you have the volumes and then ship it to the islands. And at Plastic Fisher, we're even trying to establish that in Indonesia. It's also hard because our budget is very limited, but generally speaking, this is something we're looking into and which we would like to enable. So sorting at least is possible, manually sorting, not high tech, but really easy between PET bottles and the rest of the plastic. This would then at least allow to bring it at volumes to the mainland. And I saw that in the chat more often that it's about EPR, and I think this was where we based our business model on before plastic credits became a thing. So we decided to also finance our operations through the EPR scheme by offering an offsetting or in compensation way. It's a sensitive topic because, if you produce 100 tons of plastic, you cannot compensate this by collecting other 100 tons. Of course, this has to be reduced. But what we can offer is that if you bring this into the market, you should at least be responsible for collecting the same amount and ensuring the processing. And by using EPR or CSR at the moment budgets, we can finance these operations and the sorting on these islands, and then transport it to the mainland and bring it to more mature sorting or recycling facilities.
Thank you for adding on. But earlier, Majel, you also have something to add on this note as well, right? If I'm not wrong.
But I think Karsten sort of covered a little bit already, and I see that my colleague has responded in the chat as well. And so there's some really interesting activities that we are planning to do that you can look at that. Just quickly touching on the idea of, sorting and so on. From our research, we didn't find that to be a common practice among households. And so, of course, this is an essential step, right? But that also means we will need to sort of embed this as part of the solution, which is, enforcing or introducing this type of behavior, like waste sorting, waste management behavior, basically. So that would be an important step of the intervention as well, just so that, once we introduce the system, the people actually are willing to do it and not just abandon it and leave our intervention to die on its own.
Of course, I also meant that we are doing that as not, I visited the big recycling plant last week, and what the guys said there in this recycling plant is that the most important step is the proper household pre-sorting. This is the most important step for them to have a better recycling rate. And this is something, of course, that could or should be implemented, but then you also need around it a system of waste management that you need to provide. So what we at least could start with is saying, hey, here's a pickup point, or a point where we take your waste and sort it. And ideally, we ask the people to pre-sort it to get rid of the waste. But if they don't have a place to bring their waste, they can pre-sort it or leave it. In the end, they will burn it in front of their household, sorted or pre-sorted or not. So we need to provide them a place to bring the waste. And this is a big thing to to fix as well.
Thank you for sharing. So right now we have one participant raise his hand. So perhaps Massimiliano, you can unmute yourself and ask any further questions.
Thank you, Likhedy, for giving me the chance of asking some question. I would like to know, is there any, as far as I know, the plastic collected is too much full of foreign parts and basically dirty in order to be recycled. So that's actually a problem, because even if we would collect the plastic that is around, that is actually not usable. And even if it's sorted, it's actually it's not actually of a high good quality in order to recycle. For example, in my case, I'm interested into textiles. The PET is actually so dirty that it's impossible to get the PET chips so clean. So any idea on how to go about it? Thank you.
So I would vote for collecting it already, at least in rivers, before it can enter the oceans. So you catch it a bit earlier, so it's not maybe for years already in the oceans. We have a collaboration with a company that is making backpacks out of ocean PET, and it actually works. So there is a opportunity or a possibility to recycle the PET. Of course, you also have parts of the PET that you cannot recycle because they've been 100 years in the oceans. When it comes to the other plastics that we find, the situation is the same. If you have a multi-layer flexible plastic, you cannot recycle it even if you get it fresh from the industrial plant. So the only thing that you can do with it is using it for incineration or pyrolysis, some say, but I'm not an expert in that. Yeah, so it's most of the plastic besides PET is, in my opinion, even in Germany where I'm living, not recyclable. So it's also not recyclable, especially not when you collect it from a heavy metal polluted river or saltwater oceans. So I think that's quite hard to achieve, or not, in my opinion, not realistically to achieve at scale in the very near future. So rather collecting it and investing more money, in my opinion, in prevention and active collection, rather than looking for a 100% recycling rate of the collected material, because this is not feasible. But we have more experts on that sitting next to me, I guess.
No, I would just say you're exactly right. And I think really this needs to happen at both household and business level, because it's waste, right? And when it comes to waste, it can come in any form of dirtiness. And then that's why, again, enforcing this at household business level is a crucial step. And other than that, we'll just have to see.
Thank you. So I hope that would answers back to Massimiliano questions already. And we already exhausted our 90 minutes of the panel discussion. And so if there's no further questions from our audience or to anyone who are being part of this discussion, then I would also conclude right here and wrap up, because we do not want to delay as well. So I'd say we do not have any more questions. Then I would like to thank you so much to our speakers for sharing their insights, their projects, as well as their experiences, and as well as to our participant, of course, for joining our discussion this morning and to interact with us as well, not just posing questions, but I can see that you have been sharing a lot of your experiences as well, and also your ideas on waste management as well as marine pollution specifically as well. So thank you very much on that note. And just for your information as well, that this afternoon we will also continue with another panel discussion at 2 p.m., which will be about national governance and policies in waste management, where we also have the presence of the official of the Ministry of Environment. So if you have time, please do not forget to join us by Zoom link. So it will not be difficult, just use the same us. And so thank you very much. And I would like to conclude our session right here. And thank you to our speakers. Please have a nice day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.